Larry Eli Morello Moncado was a 25-year-old man from a town called Council Bluffs in Iowa. He was a shop attendant. He worked in a no frills, and he returned home from work on Thanksgiving in November 2009 complaining of a headache, and throughout the course of that evening his family observed he was sort of irate, in a weird mood, but he had just began a new round of antidepressants, hoping to better his condition he had been suffering for a while. But they just chalked it up to the new medication messing with his system and his appetite. The next day, he would come home even more irate, even more aggressive. He ended up getting into an argument with his mother and father and storming out without his shoes, in nothing but the clothes he was wearing, no jacket, and there are some contrasting reports, but it is generally accepted that the weather outside on that day was abysmal. Some say it was poor weather, some say it was a complete snowstorm. And he walked out unprepared, no shoes, no jackets, into what many say was an actual snowstorm. Now, the next day, being the day after Thanksgiving, he didn't have a shift at work. It was his day off, yet he showed up at work, supposedly. There's no CCTV footage. There's nothing saying he showed up at work that day, but he probably did after storming out from the argument he'd had with his parents. And he went missing. Completely vanished. No sign of him. And everyone thought he went to work. That's what the parents assumed. He went to work. Despite the fact he had no shift, the parents assumed he went to work. And then there was no sign of him at all. There was an intensive search in the area around. There was nothing found. Then people thought maybe, as he was technically a Honduran citizen, he may have been deported. There were searches in Honduras. There were searches in customs offices. He was nowhere. Then 10 years down the line, January 2019, he went missing in November of 2009. The No Frills is shut now. It's closed down. It's just no one is in there. No one has been in there for about 4 years. Okay? A group of removal workers come to remove shelves and the fridges because they're no longer needed. The shop is shut. And when moving one of the fridges, they make a shock discovery. They find Larry's body behind a freezer. It has been speculated that he climbed on top of the freezer, either to move something, to clean something, or out of pure irrational behaviour, and just fell. There was an 18-inch gap behind that freezer. He just fell, was there for 10 years decomposing, and no one knew. No one thought to check behind there at any point. No one smelt anything, and the fridge he was behind, the freezer, had this huge extractor type fan that made such a loud noise so that were he to scream for help, no one heard him. He was shown in the autopsy, though it was difficult to perform with accuracy given 10 years of skeletal decay. The autopsy showed no signs of inherent trauma, so he most likely died of either starvation or air deprivation. So he would have been there for days, alive, while the shop was still open and people were in it. He died behind that. And for years he was there, stuck, slowly decaying, and looking on the Google reviews, people actually complain of a smell, but because it was a grocer's and they had a butcher's within it, people thought that was the cause of the problem. No one suspected that this man who had been missing was behind a fridge in his workplace the whole time. He had just climbed up there and fell and was stuck and was never found for 10 years until they moved it. That's honestly terrifying and shocking, and I can't believe that it went like that. And for 10 years, the smell wasn't enough for someone to, look. They didn't assume after when the shop had shut and they'd moved all the meat out of the butchers and there was still a smell. No one went to clean there, because regulation in supermarkets employs that there must be like thorough cleans every few months, and no one cleaned behind it, no one looked behind it, no one suspected him to be behind there because the shop was like the last place he was probably at. No one thought that. It just blows my mind that he was there and nothing happened. Like, no one knew anything about it. But why I'm so interested in this case is because I feel, though it's quite different and though it's quite far removed, I feel maybe this could give some justice to the belief in the Brian Schaefer case that perhaps he is still within the Ugly Tuna Saloon, in which is basically the Brian Schaefer case. The man entered a pub, was seen on CCTV entering, was never seen exiting, yet every other patron was accounted for exiting. He was the only person who came in and never went out, and there was a back door, but the back door was a construction area that was deemed dangerous to go through, so if he went there, he probably would have got stuck there. And so, but they've performed these renovations now in that place, the Ugly Tuna Saloon, which is shut now. It's a different place, but involving in the renovations was like a complete teardown of this area that they suspected he could have been in, and they found nothing. And at the time, the only renovations would have been interior works, carpeting and lighting. So if he had gone missing in that area, they most likely would have found him during those later renovations, yet they didn't. So people say, oh no, he mustn't still be in there. He must have left or have been removed from that place without us knowing. But if this case of Larry Eli Murillo Moncado, such a long name, I apologise if I'm butchering it, was able to be in the place undetected, which was treaded through so many times. The construction room was a back room. No one would have entered there apart from very few bar staff occasionally. If he was able to be in that place unknown for 10 years, maybe that's exactly how Brian is. Maybe he's still there, completely unknown. Maybe there needs to be more uncovering in those back areas of the Ugly Tuna Saloon. Perhaps he can still be found. Perhaps it's not an entire cold case. And I really want the Brian Schaefer case to be solved. And I want him to be alive, of course I do. But if he's still alive and he just ran away and started a new life, he's a huge dick. Like, honestly. But I do genuinely believe that at this point he has to be dead. There's no way he's still alive. And the potential that this can happen, that someone can be in a public space decaying and not be found, gives credence to the theory that Brian is still in the back rooms.